Be seated.
It's time for Talk Law Radio with Todd Marquardt. Todd Marquardt, attorney at law in Texas. If you're a millionaire or a thousandaire, Talk Law Radio is now on the air. Call in with your business law question, your elder law question, veteran aid, Medicaid, build a business to get paid. 210-308-8867. Or ask a question online at marquardtlawfirm.com. That's MARQUARDT lawfirm.com. And now it's Talk Law Radio with Todd Marquardt.
Welcome to Talk Law Radio. I'm Todd Marquardt. On the radio, on podcasts, on Facebook, and on YouTube. Also go to talklawradio.com and you can search for all the archived episodes. Search for topics about the law that you want to know about. The purpose of this show is to help you discover your legal issue blind spots by listening to me talk about the law on the radio. And today we're going to be talking about video games and psychology. With us is Dr. John Delatorre, Kirk Harrison, and Blake Newberry. But first, I want to acknowledge that we're going to be talking about a controversial issue today. We're going to be talking about school shootings and specifically the Uvalde school massacre. And it really does break my heart that happened and continues to happen. But we need to talk about it because it's important to know everything that we can know and how the law gets involved. And you might have different opinions than the four of us today, and I respect that. I just ask that you respect us and me and not say anything nasty on social media. It's okay to have a different opinion, but please don't be mean. So today, before I move on, I also wanted to say that my youngest child just graduated from high school just last week, and so I'm familiar with the lockdown drills and the fear that the children have at school. It really hit home when my older son, was telling us that because he was in high school at the same time as my daughter when she started in 9th grade, he was still there, that he had thought out this elaborate plan about how he was going to go save her if there was an active shooter event. And I don't know if that was a good idea or not, or what they're supposed to do, because I never had to do that in school. But it just hit home to me that he had already thought about this independent of what anybody else was talking about. So it's awful. But again, I just want to have an open dialogue about it. And if you have comments, feel free to post a comment on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, or YouTube, and we can have a dialogue there as well. So I'd like to introduce Dr. John Delatorre. Just give a wave, John, so they know which one you are. He's a forensic psychologist, and he does a lot of work with the legal side of things and helping lawyers like me understand what might be going on in the mind of someone else. And we'll ask him more about how that works as we go along. He's licensed in Arizona and Texas, and earned his doctorate from Midwestern University, an APA-accredited program. He completed his internship at a crisis stabilization unit and completed advanced training in forensic psychology. He provides therapy and assessment for a variety of concerns, including providing interventions to the severely mentally ill individuals with significant trauma histories and crisis interventions and de-escalation. He has training and experience in various assessments, including general psychological risk threat assessments. He's a member of the Association of Threat Assessment Professionals, competency to stand trial and criminal responsibility, and psychosexual evaluations. He's a member of the Association for Treatment of Sexual Abusers, the ATSA. He works with police and public safety and immigration, and he's a trial consultant and often provides psychological analysis for television news and court shows. You can contact him by email at delatorre@resolutionfcs.com. And you can find him on Twitter and Instagram. Just search for Dr. John Delatorre. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
We also have with us Kirk Harrison, who's a frequent radio co-host with me here at Talk Law Radio. He's going to be chiming in with his opinion.
I don't know how I could add anything to the big list that he just had there,
Yeah. Just be curious about how all this comes together. Also with us on the other side is attorney Blake Newberry. He's an attorney with Marquardt Law Firm focusing on probate and estate planning. So now we'll get into the meat and potatoes of the show. I wanted to talk first about this court case that the parents of the deceased children in Uvalde, Texas, filed against Meta, which is the parent company for Instagram, and the parent company for the video game Call of Duty, which is Activision. So they filed a lawsuit for wrongful death and a lot of other claims, seeking money damages for the loss of their children. And so I've been asking around to my fans and friends and family about should the video game manufacturer be responsible for this shooter that massacred all those children in Uvalde. What do you guys think about this lawsuit?
As an attorney, I mean, looking at it from a legal perspective, I think it's a difficult case for the families to win against Activision based upon some of the claims in there about the way Call of Duty is created and the guns themselves in the game. They specify that that they actually name the manufacturers in the game, when in reality the game itself at Call of Duty, the guns that are in there are just blanket. They don't have names on them anymore. They don't have any kind of definition as it being the type of weapon that was used by the shooter in Uvalde.
But did they at one time?
They did in Call of Duty 4 in 2007. I remember they didn't specify. I know it was mainly the sniper rifle, the Barrett 50 caliber sniper rifle.
Oh, okay.
But in the newer ones, it's all just made up names that use a template for a type of gun. But my perspective is I think it's a difficult case for them, the parents, to win against Activision. I think they could have a case like the Rivington case that was done in another court matter. So maybe they have a case against Daniel Defense, but not Activision itself.
So Daniel Defense is being sued. They were the gun manufacturer for the gun that this active shooter in Uvalde used, right?
That is correct. Okay,
so John, what do you think about the possibility that psychologically speaking, a child could play this game and somehow be convinced that they should do this kind of thing?
Yeah, I think when you look at the research about whether or not violent media of any kind contributes anything to aggressive acts from individuals, it's all over the place. What we think we know is that once you are, immersed in whatever violent media you're participating in, whether it's violent video games or violent movie, violent TV show, whatever it is, you are aggressive in the sort of immediate time frame of you experiencing whatever that media is. But it doesn't necessarily extend to a long period of time following. And that's important because there is a myth that these individuals snap, right? And that's a myth going back since the 1980s and even before, like going postal and stuff like that, going berserk, where there's this connotation that these individuals simply snap and one day they decide that they're going to engage in an act of mass violence. What we know for sure is that that is absolutely not what is happening. These individuals plan over a long period of time to figure out what exactly it is that they're going to be doing and accumulating all the resources that they need to, enact the plan that they're going to be involved in. So the notion that if you play a violent video game, that automatically means that you're going to then have the will or the means or anything associated with engaging in such an organized shooting, I think it does a disservice to all of the individuals who do play these violent video games, of which there are millions, and they don't ever engage in any kind of aggressive act at all.
I see that. One of the questions I was thinking about is when you were saying on the legal terms, it's going to get ugly in that trial because there's going to be a lot of that push against the parental control. And as you were just saying, where it's over a long period of time that they plan this, when the mom and dad come into the room and see him laying out these plans, it's not like they were hidden or anything, okay? I mean, my understanding, he tried to get the gun and took a little while, and a lot of things happened before it actually went in. How would you not know that that's going on? That's the problem, because then they're going to go to court, and I hope they're ready. And God bless them. I understand the loss. I mean, it's devastating. It's a hurtful thing, but it's going to be ugly, okay? Because this company is going to hire some high-powered guys that know what they're doing. They're going to hire guys like John here that are going to come in, and they're going to say things that, they might not like to hear. And just from a personal perspective, I was in human intelligence in the Army, which I'm not going to say exactly what that means. But anyhow, there is a point where you have to watch people, and it's over a consistent time to control people in the environment that they're in to get to that break point that you're talking about.
Sure.
All right. Now, once it happens, that's it. It's a difficult thing. Then it's a psychological problem, okay? But to get to that point, as you were saying, over a long time, none of this is going to be pretty, okay? And I can't imagine having to relive that again in court.
Oh, right.
What this went through, and then have someone come in and start throwing accusations at, their parents and this and that, and they're the people whose kids died are going to be saying, yeah, it's them. Yeah. I mean, it's going to be ugly all the way around. And that's where I see it as a perspective. Court in itself is not a pleasant place, but being back and forth, and then you coming in and people who are knowledgeable and experts.
Well, let me stop you right there. We got to take a break. So we'll be right back. Stay tuned.
Planning for your summer vacation? Don't forget to plan for the things that really matter. None of us are guaranteed tomorrow. Have you planned for your final affairs? Why spend time and money on vacation plans but neglect your legacy? Contact Marquardt Law Firm today. Our attorneys focus on business and estate law, including last wills, living trusts, and tax-protected inheritance plans. Call 210-530-4278. That's 210-530-4278. Or visit marquardtlawfirm.com.
We're talking about the Uvalde school massacre again today because there's a lawsuit that the parents of the massacred children filed against Instagram and Call of Duty video game and Daniel Defense in Los Angeles. So we're talking about that specific court case. And with us is Dr. Delatorre in the middle. He's a forensic psychologist. On one side, we have Kirk Harrison, who's a co-host with me at Talk Law Radio, and Blake Newberry, attorney for Marquardt Law Firm. So this lawsuit that was filed in California alleges some of these things I'm going to talk about now, that Activision, the maker of Call of Duty, is in the wildly lucrative business of training adolescents to become gunmen. Its first-person shooter franchise, Call of Duty, creates a vividly realistic and addicting theater of violence in which teenage boys learn to kill with frightening skill and ease. Call of Duty is a simulation, not a game. It teaches players how to aim, reload, and fire accurately while habituating the teenage nervous system to inflict repeated graphic violence. And though the killing is virtual, the weapons are authentic. They are designed to perfectly imitate their real-life counterparts in look, feel, recoil, and accuracy. This cunning form of marketing has helped cultivate a new youthful consumer base for the AR-15 rifle, the weapon of choice for most Call of Duty players and mass shooters. So that's just one of the allegations there, but there's a lot to unpack. I want you, Blake, since you're a player of this game, tell us what it's like.
So, I mean, for myself and the general population that plays it, I mean, most of the time when you're playing Call of Duty, you're playing it online. You're playing it with friends. You're playing it against people that are all over the world. And, I mean, the allegations of the finding the attachments for a weapon, the gun print of the weapon, I mean, they do have different classes and subclasses of guns, and based upon the weapon that you choose, you can add attachments to it, sights, things of that nature to increase the range, increase damage, increase or decrease recoil. But the attachments also can affect it in such a way. But for the average person playing it, when you add those things, you're doing it from a standpoint of the objective of the game, whether it's team deathmatch, which is just whoever gets the most kills, or if it's a objective type game where it's you get the most points based upon being on a target, or not a target, or a space for a certain amount of time. But you build the weapon for the purpose of helping you to achieve these goals. It's not to kill people. The mindset isn't, oh, I'm building a gun that then I'm going to go into the real world, buy and build myself to inflict damage on a human. It's more about fun, team building with your friends, and just having a good time. And it's not the mindset of, I'm going to do this in real life.
Yeah. So you didn't feel like that you were actually killing a person.
No, and I feel like the game also, I mean, the guns don't jam. Guns jam in real life. They don't teach you how to get rid of a jam. The reload is a button. You press X or square on PlayStation, and it reloads the weapon for you. You have unlimited clips, like you can fire one bullet and reload. That's not true to real life. Mm-hmm. The guns also have bullets that aren't true to real life. So there's aspects of the game that it doesn't teach you how to hold a weapon. Sure, you can pull a trigger, but it doesn't teach you how to hold it, how to use it, how to reload it.
Because you're holding a controller.
Right.
Well, I can tell you from a military point of view that it ain't like that, okay? You're going to have to learn, okay? And the other deal is, you would be surprised how many people do just fine on the firing range, but when someone else is shooting at them, all that training, and that's why it's so repetitive in the military, because it has to be automatic or else you're not going to be there anymore. And it's not the same. You're not, look, those guys that are on those games, I've seen these guys, I've seen screens and all of it. They're like experts. They're like all SEALs, okay? They're good. They're rolling. They're spinning. They're shooting. The reason there's so few SEALs, there's so few people that know how to do it like that. That's why. And that's why certain people are trained and certain people are chosen to take those roles. But out in real life, it's just not like that.
Yeah, and there is a difference between what is a video game and what is either augmented reality or simulation. There are military personnel that are being trained using using simulators. Pilots have long since been using simulators. Yeah. But the difference is that the environment in which they surround themselves as part of the simulation, right? They have a weapon in their hand. Now, it's clearly not able to fire, but they have a weapon in their hand, so they get the feeling of what that's like. Pilots, same thing. They have a cockpit built around them. Now, individuals who are drawn to violent video games do have, at least it's been shown in some research, that they do have hyperarousal. They do like things that get them up, right? They do like being excited, and playing these video games excites them. But I think the key here, what Blake was talking about, is that the individuals who are going to engage in an act of mass violence are isolative. They're not playing video games online with a bunch of friends. They are not interacting well with anyone around them. And so they become more and more detached, which is part of the problem, because the more detached they feel from other people, the more they're going to view other people as the objects. And they may have turned to violent video games as a method of fantasy playing, but that doesn't mean that they are now practicing how to actually engage in this behavior.
Yeah, I'm glad that you said that, because I was wondering about some of the warning signs that parents or teachers or even friends can notice about other kids or other people. You said that they're isolated a lot of the time, and there's probably some other risk factors. Are there?
Yeah, no, there's a ton, but I think the problem is that who can see them? The entry point into the pathway to violence, which is something that we talk about as threat assessment professionals. Once you enter into the pathway to violence, there's an accumulation of things that are going on that eventually leads to you acting out in this behavior. But the main entry point is what's called grievance gathering. And grievance gathering, something happens to you and you blame the world for the world being a bad place. And so then you start seeing all the bad things and start interpreting all of the things that have negative consequences as being bad things specifically directed towards you. But the reality is that, Blake, you could have grievance gathering right now, and neither one of us would actually know that you are experiencing those things. Right? You could easily be feeling short shrift because, I don't know, you're not talking as much as maybe you thought that you did, as much as you wanted to.
Interesting.
And Kirk and I mean, we're not mind readers. We would have no idea that that's actually happening. But if you get to a point where everything starts becoming evidence that the world is against you, then you have to start plotting on how you can get your agency back, how you can start getting your power back.
Right.
And the only way that I think a lot of men, and this is more societal in its issue, the only way that a lot of men feel as though they can get their power back is by engaging in aggressive behavior.
I can see that.
Saying that, that's been going on for a long time. What you're saying, that whole string you're going down is long before video games.
Yes.
This has been something, I've read articles where guys that have been, murderers that have killed people here and there, they get to that point. And when you mention that grievance thing, that's what kind of triggered me thinking about it, because that was something they always mentioned, this person. And really, when the grievance, when it's examined from the other side, it's almost like,
it's
the
not,
one
it's not
trigger
a big
that
thing.
did it. It wasn't a big thing. You're like, what the heck? But
but not for you.
Yeah,
but for that individual.
But they've been building to that point, and that was that one thing. So saying that it's the video game is a difficult stretch to get to there, because up to that point, as you're saying, it's a long walk before you get to there.
And I think too, some individuals are more susceptible than others. Right. I remember my dad, whenever I was growing up, was always like, I'll let you play these games, because I was 9 years old playing Grand Theft Auto 3 in Vice City. And my dad was like, I'll let you play these, but the moment you show you cannot handle playing them and you start acting it out outside of the video game or just talking about how fun it is, he said, I'm not going to let you play it. So he told me a story about one of his friend's kids acting out, and they didn't let the kid play it anymore. So I think there are breaking points. It's really, parents really need to know, but I think also some individuals are more susceptible to it than others.
Yeah.
But those individuals are going to be the ones that are going to be more likely to cause effects such as that.
That's a different direction than the direction of violent video games or violent media of any kind causes violence. Yeah. What we're talking about in that scenario is that the individual has already wanted and fantasized about being violent, but they didn't know how to do so. So they found a game or a movie or a TV show or something, a book or a comic, in which the violent fantasies can be expressed. Yeah.
I'm glad you mentioned comics there. One of the guys at the office mentioned that in Japan, there's all kinds of violent media, but there's a very low rate of violence in their society. And so it cannot be a direct cause. Have you ever met a psychologist, an expert that would testify that there is a direct cause, or is that just never going to be found?
No, I would never say never. There's always someone who will engage in an alliance bias in which, they feel bad because all of this stuff has happened to these families. They're persuaded by other kinds of things to make these statements. And again, the research that we have is 50-50. Right? You look at one group of research articles and it says, yeah, it absolutely does. And your aggressiveness is going to be, exponential. Then you look at another handful and it's going to be like, no, it doesn't. Or if it does, it's so incrementally small as to not be
when you bring in the empirical data, that's got to be like, you really got to dig to find that number. I mean, that percentage, and I can't throw it off the top of my head, but I guarantee it's down around the 1 or 2%, maybe less than that compared to all the people that watch this game. That's the ones that become triggered or the ones that go off on these violent behaviors. It's got to be tiny. Again, it's going to be, the legal eagles that are going to get in there, and they're going to pound on that side of the house and see if they can turn it.
We got to take another break, so stay tuned. Okay, welcome back to Talk Law Radio. I'm Todd Marquardt. On the radio, on podcasts, on Facebook, on YouTube, and on talklawradio.com. We've been talking about this court case by the Uvalde parents of deceased children who were killed in the Uvalde school massacre. And we know this is a sensitive topic, and we grieve also for those families and those children. But I think it's an important topic to discuss because there's a lawsuit involved. And so this could be a hidden legal issue blind spot for parents of teenage boys. If the lawsuit is against Activision, the maker of a video game called Call of Duty, and against Meta, the parent company of Facebook and Instagram, we'll talk about the advertising that is claimed to have occurred, and against Daniel Defense, the manufacturer of the firearm that the Uvalde shooter used. And we'll talk about lots of other things, so just keep us dialed in. We're with Dr. John Delatorre, a forensic psychologist, and Kirk Harrison, who is a co-host here at Talk Law Radio, and attorney Blake Newberry, who likes to play video games in his spare time. And so we talk a little bit about the law and a little bit about psychology. Dr. Delatorre, in the law, you studied a master's program at St. Mary's in the law. You probably remember this also, that in order to prove a wrongful death lawsuit, you have to prove causation. There's duty, breach, causation, and damages. So does this video game cause a teenage boy to want to kill other people? We've been talking about that already. How can the psychological profile of a quote normal teenage boy differ from the profile of somebody that is probably already going to commit a mass act of violence? How is the profile different?
Yeah, I think there's a lot to unpack there. Speaking about what is typical and what isn't typical, what's expected and what isn't expected. I want to be clear that anybody is capable of anything at any time for any reason, and because of that, we really struggle to kind of build what is most people like to call a profile of who's going to be a shooter. There is no singular profile for what kind of person is going to do this. We see a particular set of individuals who do this here in the United States, but that doesn't have to be the same thing across the globe. And so what we've seen here in the United States is that a lot of these individuals have, again, we started with the grievance gathering, but what their experience, what their emotional experience is that of loneliness, of desperation, of depression, and it's really turned inward. They have these thoughts of suicide. They believe as though the world isn't the world, they shouldn't be in the world and stuff like that. But for whatever reason, they're not actually capable, or maybe they attempted and they weren't successful, but they're not actually able to commit suicide. Instead, it turns outward and becomes the sort of catalyst. Because they aren't even successful in harming themselves, the world must really hate them. Because again, they already believe that the world is a hateful place against them. And so they are so focused on the negative. They're so focused on the things that cause problems within their lives that they don't see the joyfulness, they don't see the connectedness, they don't see the individuals who are reaching out and trying to help them, asking them how they're doing. They chalk it all up to antisociality and that people are only asking because they have some kind of ulterior motive. They enter into a state of paranoia where they can't trust anybody, including family or friends. And once that happens, all the red flags and all the yellow flags that you expect to see, that you want to see, that if we told ourselves, see, if we just acted on this one thing, we could have done something. They hide all that stuff until they're ready to then, once they've accumulated all the resources, once the plan is in place, once they feel prepared, and they have to feel prepared. Once they feel prepared to engage in the behavior, that's when everything ratchets it up. And that's where you'll see the YouTube videos. That's where you'll see the Instagram posts. That's where you'll start seeing all of these other things, because at that point, unless you physically stop them, they're going to do it.
Well, some people blame the shooter's parents or their family for not raising them right. Is there anything to that?
Well, I mean, Ethan Crumley's parents have both have been found guilty for their culpability. So I think, we talk about duty, right, when we talk about these civil cases. And I do believe parents have to be parents. Parents can't ever be friends of their children. And so there is a duty that parents have to raise their children to express the vulnerable emotions. That includes hate and that includes anger. Those are normal human emotions, but you have to be able to express them appropriately without causing aggressive behaviors. So I think it's important and imperative on parents to be able to model such behaviors. But that's also putting a lot on parents, because a lot of parents, maybe they don't have those skills necessary to do it. So I do think parents bear responsibility, but ultimately the person made a choice. They didn't have to do this thing. They chose to do this thing. They bear the ultimate responsibility.
And
I agree.
It's been I don't know how long, probably since the beginning of time, somebody raises, let's say 5 kids. One goes off and does this. And the other 4, you might have 2 pastors. You might have I'd say a lawyer, but no. You can go off and be something else, an engineer. You could be, a volunteer that goes all over the world with first aid and everything. I mean,
and they always wonder what happened.
What happened to that one? But you don't know. Sometimes people are different. Right. Even children are different. I got 2 boys, and I can tell you they're completely different. Raised in the same house, raised with the same rules, raised with everything the same. They're different, and that thank goodness for different, because my family, we got 6 boys. We didn't have all, we weren't, Lord knows we weren't altar boys, but I'm going to tell you, none of this came out. We just,
Blake, what about the court cases against that other video game, Grand Theft Auto? Some of the reports I read were that the video game was addictive. And that was mentioned in this court case also.
I think a video game being addictive is different than it influencing you to be violent. Like, just because it's fun to play, you have these microtransactions that feel like a casino. Like it stimulates the joy in your brain and makes it fun. I mean, that's different. Being addictive and wanting to constantly play it and forgetting your responsibilities doesn't tie into you being violent.
Right. I
mean, you could say, I'm a person who enjoys going to Vegas, but you don't see me going to Vegas every week and blowing $10,000 because I enjoy gambling because it's fun. Mm-hmm. It's also on the person to make the right choices.
Right. You're able to
like that.
Control your own behavior.
Yeah. So being likable and enjoying it and maybe making your life worse because you're constantly playing something that's a whole other issue than being violent.
Right.
But
John,
it doesn't stem to violence.
What do you think about the addictiveness of video games?
I think, of course they are. Of course, that's kind of the point. They need you to keep playing it. right? And yes, you get the reward center, the dopamine goes every time you get whatever transaction you were looking for, whatever goal is achieved, whatever mission objective has been satisfied. Yeah, you get that. But of course it's designed to be that way. Television shows are designed to be that way. Everything is designed to satisfy that reward zone that we have inside of our brains. But some individuals are not capable of regulating that part of themselves. And that's when they start falling deeper into traps. Mm-hmm. But that's not the same thing as someone wanting to engage in an act of mass violence.
Right. So should we as a society focus more on advertising or talking about the benefits of good mental health? You know, a lot of the commercials on TV are geared toward prescription medication. Maybe there should be some commercials about how to handle some of these problems if you're addicted to video games or gambling. You know, there's resources out there.
Yeah, no, I think that society as a whole has to really take a hard look at what it considers important. Teachers need to be paid better. They 100% need to be paid better. And that, you know, parents need to have, you know, the ability to actually parent. They need to have to model those skills. Mental health professionals need to be paid what they're worth. Students also need to recognize that they can do things, that they have agency, and that they can talk about their problems, that there's an authority figure in their school that isn't trying to hurt them, but that can actually help them in some way. Society itself needs to determine how it needs to go. And there's so much more that it needs to do rather than have conversations about gun access and stuff like that. Those are problems to be sure, but those aren't the problems that are going to solve the underlying issue of why violence happens.
The other thing is, you know, and a lot of people do it, you know, they restrict how much time the kids spend in front of the screen. You need to, I'm old, okay, so our deal was, one, they didn't listen to us until you were really old. And two, if you were inside, that was a mistake, okay? Yeah. And I think we're going to have to, if you want to do something simple, kick them out the door, okay? They're going to come back with skinned knees or a bump on the head or something like
outside,
that. Let them meet the other kids in the neighborhood and form interactive communication with each other. That's the one problem that's going on far beyond just the games being played, people on it. Once they get off the game, they grab their phone and then they're texting each other. Right. Texts have no emotions, okay? Right. The game has no emotions. None of those things have emotions. And then you meet a person and they can't read each other. How many of us have taken classes in communication and said, what is it? 9/10 of communication is the one that doesn't speak. It's your face, it's your eyes, it's the way you act, the way you sit back and all. That has to come back. I mean, we're going to end up with a lot of people that misread each other and get quickly angry because they misread the little annotations that you were doing with your body. Right. And so that comes back to the parenting again. Hey, man, yeah, you got this. I don't want to say we were great parents or anything, but we never bought a video game. We never bought a video console. They bought the game. They bought the console. Yeah. Well, they had to figure out a way to make money. Not an allowance, okay? Yeah. They had to figure out what to do, and I'm going to tell you now, you know, there's stuff out there. You know, one of my boys was he was 12 years old when he got a little patch, so he could referee soccer games. He made a ton of money doing that stuff.
Okay, Kirk, we got to wrap up and take a break. So stay tuned. We'll talk more about this court case.
Planning for your summer vacation? Don't forget to plan for the things that really matter. None of us are guaranteed tomorrow. Have you planned for your final affairs? Why spend time and money on vacation plans but neglect your legacy? Contact Marquardt Law Firm today. Our attorneys focus on business and estate law, including last wills, living trusts, and tax-protected inheritance plans. Call 210-530-4278. That's 210-530-4278. Or visit marquardtlawfirm.com.
We've been talking about the Uvalde school massacre because there's a lawsuit that was filed in Los Angeles against Instagram, the video game Call of Duty, and the gun manufacturer Daniel Defense. And we've been talking all about the psychological issues involved. And now I want to ask you, Blake, about other types of media that gets blamed for behavior.
Yeah, absolutely. So this highly reminds me of Eminem in the 90s and early 2000s when he was getting criticized for his lyrics, as well as in one of his songs, he even says, like, blame me and I'll be the one getting sued over you if you assault somebody. And so this just reminds me of that so heavily because essentially people try to put the blame on other things for causing issues for people. And it's just, as I was mentioning previously off the air, I mean, it's no different than nowadays with rap music that I'm a big enjoyer of, with Future, Lil Baby, Lil Uzi Vert. I mean, they rap about drugs, sex, gang violence, selling drugs as well. And I mean, just because I listen to that, I'm not out on the corner selling drugs, or I'm not in a gang or trafficking guns or anything of that nature. So it's kind of just things of that nature where people just try to push it off on someone else and blame the media of that for causing the issue that is completely mental.
But I want to ask you, John, because part of this lawsuit is about advertising, and you know, in the 80s and 90s, the cigarette manufacturers were targeted for advertising to minors because they said it works. You've been Joe Camel, you've been advertising directed at minors, and they've been buying your product. So do you think that there's a psychological aspect to the advertising component?
Well, I mean, yeah. I mean, these individuals have, you know, advertising executives and creative directors. They need to have an insight in order to sell a product. But I think what we're missing is that the individuals who are going to be doing this didn't need advertising. They didn't need Joe Camel. They didn't need any of these things. They were going to be doing it anyway. These things they could point at and say, well, look, you're clearly targeting me with this, you know, image. That the direction is going the wrong way. The arrow is pointing in the wrong direction is what I'm trying to say, which is these individuals already had the impulse to engage in whatever the behavior was. They just needed some kind of excuse to do so. And advertising, music, movies, video games, all of these things are pointed to as the reason why. And I understand. I mean, these families are hurting and they need someone to blame because the person that they absolutely should be blaming isn't here to blame. They're not here to stand trial for the hurt that they've caused these families. And that leaves a gaping space within each of these family members and all these victims, because now they don't get their day in court. And if you don't get your day for justice, then you have to find ways of bleeding that rock.
Yeah. So in your experience as a consultant for attorneys in court cases, do you think if the shooter is brought to trial, do you think that that's enough of a remedy?
For some. I think for some it satisfies. I think for others a change in political representative would probably suffice. For others, they were always going to look for as many people to blame as they could, because the loss is so great. For them, the loss that they're experiencing, and none of us can quantify that kind of loss. None of us would ever know how much hurt that they are experiencing. And sometimes you just need more to try to fill in that space to get something. So I think it just depends on each individual. And that's not to say that if those family members that only blamed the shooter, that they're somehow lesser than, or their grief is lesser than those parents who are blaming the shooter and guns and parents like that. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that some people, that their experience of grief is such that, you know, it'll never be filled no matter what you do. And so you try to do as much as you can in order to try to fill it.
And I hate to roll back on it, but I'm going to pull it back. if you don't have a religious way to handle this, because the great questions in the world are why. Okay, that's one of the most difficult questions of anything to answer. I don't know how you're going to fill that hole. Okay, it's going to be extremely difficult and take such a long time and all. And I would hope that some people have some type of religious or some peaceful aspect that they can draw upon to give themselves strength. They won't get the complete answer of why, but it'll help them accept it and move on, because that's the most difficult part, I think. And I'm not trying to step on your toes there, John.
Yeah, no, it's the act. It's we see this a lot in the shooter drills, right? The active shooter drills and something like that. A lot of that is just based on this idea that we don't want to cause panic. Mm-hmm. We don't want the children to panic. So if we give people something to do, if they can feel as though they have some authority or some agency in engaging in some behavior that they are capable of doing, run, hide, fight, whatever that is, or having these lawsuits and targeting these individuals for compensatory and punitive damages, for any of these things is a thing that we can do. It gives us our control back.
So I want to talk about some of the resources that the law has been providing to schools. We have counselors, we have school resource officers, which are policemen, right, that are at the schools. Have you been hearing anything in your community, your industry, about how to either help children avoid this or deal with it if it does happen?
So I know early on there were some counselors that went there specifically for the traumatic event itself. They consider it a psychological first aid, a first responder in that way. Some counselors have stayed, but from my perspective, each community must heal itself. Each community is its own living, breathing thing. And an outsider, so like me, I obviously don't live in Uvalde. I could go there and I could do the best that I can, but ultimately I'm going to be the person that leaves, which could cause another traumatic event if they're, drawn to me and we have a rapport and then I leave. Communities need to heal each other, and however it is that they choose to do so, whether it's tearing down buildings or keeping buildings or erecting monuments, however it is that the community decides. Because as we were describing, community is really at the heart of this.
Right.
When you're disconnected from your community, that's when you start finding yourself in over your head. But when you are engaged and actively engaged in your community, that's when the healing is going to happen, because that's when we're connected to each other.
And so, Blake, you're a young parent. You have 2 little ones at home. What do you and your wife and your friends talk about when it comes to your kids are going to be in school someday? How are you going to deal with this?
Yeah, so the biggest conversation we have is, that fear. The unknown, because you can plan and do everything to be prepared for an event such as this, but it's just, is it ever going to happen? You don't know when. You don't know if people are going to be in situations where they're compromised. And so, that's the biggest conversation we have is what do we do to protect the kids and how? And at this point, unfortunately, I don't think there's a good answer.
Right.
Because as much as money you could dump in and put cops into schools, I think it was Stoneman Douglas. They had a resource police officer that didn't do anything. And so it's like you can and dump money into counselors. But to my perspective, what it really comes down to, like I said, the conversations are fear, but you can't expect the schools to be the defense line. Mm-hmm. You can't expect the schools to be underfunded and funding cut and expect them to do anything that's going to have a widespread effect. It's got to be at this point on the parents to protect your kids.
And that's true. Look at this at Uvalde. You don't think that all them police officers and all went through how many hours, how many millions of dollars were spent in training them, and they messed it up royally, okay, the way they handled it. One was to pass off of who's in charge and all this kind of stuff. Doesn't matter how much you train, okay? You know what? When you hear that first shot of anger or you hear that first alarm go off, different things happen, okay? Like you were saying, it's the fight or flight or what comes in that you're going to do, and it's very difficult. Now, I'm all for the training, okay? Repetitious training creates a repetition. Okay?
A habit.
When all your senses and your emotions are going crazy, you're following that repetition. Okay, I'm following that teacher. We're going out this door. We're putting tables against the walls and all this kind of stuff. That's good, okay? That kind of training is very good, I think, because that's exactly what the military does. And the reason they do it is because of that. So
let's give John the last minute, something you want the audience to know about how to deal with this with their kids or what they should expect from schools. We'll give you the last minute as our expert today.
Talk to your kids. Talk to your kids developmentally. Talk to them all the time. Have them talk to you. Make space for them to talk to you about whatever it is. The more confident that they feel that they can come to you with anything, the more likely they are to come to you with anything. And schools should not be target hardened. Schools are not prisons. Schools shouldn't be erected with barbed wire and walls and fences and stuff like that because that instills fear.
Good point.
And we cannot live in a society filled with fear. The more we live in fear, the more likely some of those individuals are going to turn it to anger and turn it against us.
Okay, well, thank you for joining us today. That's all the time we have. I appreciate you. If you want to know more about Dr. John Delatorre, look him up online. We'll talk to you later.